Look at the people around you. Different skin tones, different hair, different facial features, different bodies. And yet, every one of them belongs to the same species. That sounds obvious today, but if you could travel far enough back in human history, one question would become impossible to ignore. How did one species end up looking so different? And the answer is not simply because people lived in different places. Something much more powerful was happening. Your skin is carrying a record of where your ancestors lived. Every time sunlight hits your skin, ultraviolet radiation is doing something to your body. Too much UV can damage cells and break down folate, a nutrient that matters for reproduction and development. Melanin, the pigment responsible for much of our skin color, helps protect against that damage. So in environments with intense ultraviolet radiation, darker pigmentation could provide a major survival advantage. But now move north. Farther from the equator, sunlight becomes weaker, especially during the winter. And that creates a completely different problem. Your body needs UVB radiation to help produce vitamin D. Too little UVB can make that harder. Over many generations, natural selection favored lighter pigmentation in some populations living in regions where UV exposure was lower. That means something as visible as skin color can actually be connected to something you cannot see, the amount of sunlight reaching your ancestors. But here's where the story gets much more interesting. Human skin did not change because nature decided some people should be dark and others should be light. There was no finish line, no master plan. Evolution was solving local problems, generation after generation. And sunlight wasn't the only pressure. Humans moved into deserts, forests, mountains, grasslands, coastlines, and freezing northern environments. They encountered different temperatures, different diets, different diseases, and different lifestyles. Some populations became isolated for thousands of years. Others repeatedly mixed with neighboring groups. Every movement changed the genetic story. And sometimes, evolution wasn't even the reason a trait became common. Chance mattered too. Imagine a small group of people becoming separated from a larger population. By random chance, certain genetic variants might become more common in that smaller group. This process, called genetic drift, can change populations even when a trait provides no special survival advantage. Now add migration. Then add intermarriage. Then add thousands of generations. Suddenly, the human family tree becomes less like a set of separate branches and more like a constantly reconnecting network. And this is where one of the biggest misconceptions about human appearance falls apart. Humans did not evolve into separate biological types. We remained one species. The visible differences between populations are real, but they do not divide humanity into neat biological boxes. Human genetic variation is often gradual across geography. There isn't a precise line on Earth where one kind of human suddenly becomes another. In fact, many traits we notice immediately are controlled by numerous genes working together. Skin pigmentation is a particularly good example. There isn't one simple gene that says this person has this skin color. Hundreds of genetic variants can contribute to pigmentation, and those variants have been shaped by ancestry, natural selection, migration, and chance. So when you look at someone whose appearance is completely different from yours, you are not looking at a different kind of human. You're looking at a different chapter of the same evolutionary story. And here's the part that makes human evolution genuinely remarkable. The differences we notice today are relatively recent compared with the full history of our species. Homo sapiens emerged in Africa, and for a huge portion of our existence, humans lived within African environments. Later, populations expanded across the planet. They entered places their ancestors had never experienced. They encountered new sunlight, new climates, new foods, new pathogens, and new ecological challenges. And they adapted. Not because humans became less connected, but because humans became incredibly good at surviving almost anywhere. Think about what that means. The same species that evolved in Africa eventually lived in Arctic environments, tropical forests, high mountains, deserts, islands, and enormous grasslands. Our appearance changed along the way, but our underlying biological connection remained. And humans kept doing something evolution alone cannot explain. we carried culture with us. Clothing changed how much sunlight reached the skin. Shelters changed exposure to temperature. Cooking changed diets. Technology changed survival pressures. Migration mixed genes between populations that had been separated for generations. Human evolution was never just biology operating in isolation. It was biology interacting with behavior, environment, and culture. That's why the human story cannot be reduced to a simple map of skin colors. Our appearance is the visible surface of a much deeper story. A story about sunlight, migration, isolation, adaptation, chance, and thousands of generations of people trying to survive in places that were completely different from one another. So why did humans stop looking the same? The surprising answer is that we never really stopped being the same. We remained one species while our ancestors adapted to an enormous variety of environments. The differences we see are not proof that humanity split into separate kinds of people. They are evidence of just how far one species managed to travel. Different faces, different skin, different hair, same human story. And perhaps that's the strangest thing of all. When you look across humanity today, you're not seeing how different we became. You're seeing how adaptable we are.